What's the one thing that unites all fantasy stories with reality? Racism. I'm not trying to get political for once, but it's a fact, no matter which way you look at it. Elves don't like dwarves, dwarves don't like humans, and humans don't trust elves. There's always something. Well, in this one, mortal vampires fight against immortal vampires when they aren't going to school. This is 2014's Vampire Academy. Spoiler alert, while I might be giving you my opinion on the film, that's no substitute for watching it for yourself. Links to the film are in the description. And for those of you that need to hear this, this is just a movie. All stunts are for the sake of story and shouldn't be attempted on your own. No animals were harmed in the making of this film. Viewer discretion is advised. We open up to a car, driving down the road with Rose and some adolescent teen vampires. And they ask Mr. Dragomir to turn the radio up. Suddenly, a car hits the car head-on. And we see Rose wake up to the sounds of Lissa crying next door. When Rose goes in, she wakes Lissa up to make sure she's okay. And it turns out that she has a connected psyche. Rose reminds her that she's just supposed to be fitting in as a normal human being, but Lissa reminds her that it's only been a year since they ran away from the academy. Rose tells Lissa that her one job is to make sure that she's safe, and she assures her that the academy is definitely still hunting them. Just then, Rose spots that Lissa's hungry, and she takes her to the kitchen to let her feed on her. This is a nice mutual understanding. Suddenly they have to run away because guardians are searching for them. I didn't expect that much from this movie. But Rose kicking butt early in the movie is really refreshing. At least they didn't spend 30 minutes just setting up. We're here to learn on the go, apparently. Suddenly, Dimitri shows up, and he tells him that he's there to take them back to the academy. In one solid motion, Dimitri puts Rose on her butt, and we get a nice background story about the different kinds of vampires. The Moroi is the royalty that Lissa is, and Rose is a Dhampir guardian. Dhampirs are half vampire, half human. On the ride to the academy, Rose tries to talk smack with Dimitri, but he notices that she has a connected psyche with Lissa. Once they get to the academy, Dimitri calls for the guards to open the gate, but they're attacked by the other kind of vampires. Dimitri heads out to clear the way, and Rose breaks free from her handcuffs. When Rose gets out of the car to help, she finds herself face to face with one of the bad vampires, and it kills every other guardian that gets in his way until Dimitri shows up with two other guardians. These vampires are called Strigoi, and they only come out at night and die by way of silver stake. Rose talks about how the Strigoi are the things of their nightmares, and I'm over here wondering how bad Strigoi are if the vampires themselves fear them. It turns out that Lissa is actually royalty, and they go upstairs to talk to the headmistress. While headmistress Karova talks about punishment ideas, Prince Victor comes in to ease the mood. When Rose explains that Lissa felt safer outside of the walls of the academy, Karova takes a defensive tone as she explains that due to certain circumstances, Lissa is now in line to be a possible successor to the throne. She isn't a fan of Rose, but when Dimitri mentions that they have a bond, Karova can't believe her ears. Just then, Lissa gets into Karova's head, and the headmistress agrees to keep Rose on campus. Before saying bye, she hands Rose a telegram from her mother. A telegram? Why is it that vampires are always caught up in the ancient times and technologies? Then we get a flashback of Lissa literally mending a crow that had broken its neck. Since when did vampires have all this magic? This is already better than Twilight. Not a great movie, but better. That night, Lissa gets a prank pulled on her by her ex's new girlfriend, and Darren comes over to check on her. After an awkward interaction, they all head back to class. Then Rose goes to training and she meets up with Mason. Suddenly, she gets a connection with Lissa, where she sees her in the library in the tower. There, Lissa runs into Christian, who's considered a freak, since his parents chose to turn into Strigoi. But she forms a connection against Rose's better judgment. When he asks about how she was able to drink blood while on the road, Rose gets pulled out of the trance, and she goes through a rigorous training session with Dimitri. After that, she meets up with Lissa, and the two of them head to the cafeteria. And when I say cafeteria, I mean a blood bank with humans volunteering their blood. It's not that weird because every human there is obsessed with vampires and freely volunteers. But what sucks is the fact that every human's memory is wiped after a year of service. What's the point then? While Lissa eats, Rose runs into Victor, who wants to know if Lissa declared a magic while they were gone. Rose tells him that there wasn't much time to practice magic, and she asks about the missing teacher, Ms. Karp. Victor reminds her that boogeymen are real, but he assures her that things are what they are. Suddenly, Natalie appears, and she tries to put herself in the group with Lissa and Rose. She talks non-stop, and she points out some of the biggest gossip. When they go to the church, Rose flirts a little bit, but Mason's the one that flirts with her. When they go into the church, there's an explosion on Lissa's parents' memorial, and she's escorted out of the church. Leave it to Rose to get down to brass tacks. Those brass tacks mean getting down and dirty with a royal vampire that wants to suck her neck, though. This movie's all over the place. Once we get used to one thing, it reminds you of two other storylines that you forgot were going on as well. Luckily, Dimitri intervenes, but now Rose connects with Lissa again. Lissa steps outside her dorm to find an animal cut open and hanging over her. Again, no animals were harmed in the making of this film. After this, of course, Rose asks Dimitri to teach her how to fight, but I can't imagine that'll help with high school drama. Sure enough, the teacher reads a note that accuses Lissa of feeding off of Rose while away from the academy, and Christian has to step in to draw attention away. He burns the note and gets sent to Kurova's office. After class, Rose has to deal with Lissa running away and Mason accusing her of sleeping around. After blowing him off, Rose sneaks off to connect with Lissa, to see that she's conversing with Christian in the library. Suddenly, everyone assembles to greet Queen Tatiana for a surprise conference. A surprise conference where the queen embarrasses Lissa right in front of everyone. When Rose and Natalie go to check on Lissa, they find a blood warning on the wall. When Lissa comes in, she tells the other two that she's going after the problem at the source instead of running away. When Rose goes downstairs, she runs into Christian, who tells her that he just wants to check on her, but Rose tells him that Lissa wants him to leave her alone. The next day, Dimitri takes Rose out into the woods to train her, and he tells her that he understands her place in all of this. When Rose goes inside, she connects with Lissa, and she finds that Lissa is mind-controlling a lot of other kids to find out some dirt. That night, Lissa goes to a study session with some of the It Girls, and Rose finds a file on Mia's laptop that shows she was involved with Lissa's dead brother. As time passes, Rose gets angry, and she ends up getting stronger in the process. When she has another training session with Dimitri, she gets a little bit closer with him. Just a little. Don't get too excited. I know that quite a few movies on here are downright dirty when it comes to romance, but not this movie. The next day, Rose breaks into Kurova's office to watch clips of testimony from the missing teacher, Ms. Karp. Suddenly, Rose connects with Lissa, and she sees that Christian has become a Strigoi. He leads an attack on the school, and Rose rushes down to the plaza to fight. Once there, Rose finds Dimitri dead, and Christian turns Lissa into one of them. Dream sequence, obviously. There's no way that this movie was going to go from 0 to 100 that quickly. At church, Rose apologizes to Christian and tells him that everything she said before was actually her idea instead of Lissa's. He doesn't take this lightly, and he dips. Then Natalie shows up and tells her that there's a princess party going on, and they go there to spend time with Lissa. When Lissa uses aloof for magic, Rose senses the itch that it's giving them, and she decides to dip. In the middle of the courtyard, Natalie and Lissa catch up with Rose, and it turns out that a Psyhound is following them. Just then, Lissa finds her backpack in the middle of the courtyard, and they find her cat dead in her bag. Lissa tries to use her magic, but she passes out with cuts appearing on her arm. Of course, Rose decides to have a nice little flashback moment here, and we see that Ms. Karp actually hints that there's something else at play here. Because of course there is. This is only vampire elitists keeping tabs on things. Rose tells the higher-ups about Lissa's talents, and after being allowed to see the hidden footage for Ms. Karp turning into a Strigoi, Rose confides in Dimitri. Dimitri tells her that there's more to learn about St. Vladimir, and she heads to the library to learn about it. Once there, Rose ends up getting help from Christian, and they find out that the magic that Lissa uses is called Spirit. Christian thinks that someone's trying to toy with Lissa to make her mad. But when they leave the library, Lissa spots them hugging as they say goodbye. Christian tries to explain that he knows what Lissa needs, but when Rose tries to reason with her, Lissa goes on a tangent. It isn't until Rose breaks her leg in a hole that Lissa stops. When the headmistress comes in to tell the two girls that they're going to be put in a bunker, Victor tells them that they're actually going on a shopping trip for the Equinox dance that night. That night, the girls get ready for the dance, and Rose opens a gift from Victor that turns out to be a stylish necklace. After a final warning, the three girls make their way to the dance, where they split up and enjoy their night. While Lissa kisses Christian on the dance floor, Rose follows Dimitri until Mason stops her. Mason has the two guys that were spreading rumors about Rose, and they apologize for everything. On top of that, Rose punches Mia in the face before being escorted out of the dance. Rose punching Mia was definitely a fulfilling moment in the film. There hasn't been much in this movie that made me really go wow, but that was perfect. Oh, so really quickly, Rose gets taken to Kurova's office where she ends up sedating the headmistress instead. Then she pops over to Dimitri's room, and of course when your best friend has been kidnapped, there's always time for a little hanky-panky, because this scene was obligatory. Suddenly, Dimitri pulls off Rose's necklace that has a love spell, and they head out to try to locate Lissa. While they drive, Rose connects with Lissa, and she finds out that Victor is actually the one behind all of this. He wants her to heal him out of his sickness, but when she refuses, he brings in an air magic user that tortures Lissa, which ends up torturing Rose too. After a little bit, Lissa decides to heal Victor a little bit. and she passes out from the session. Once Dimitri pulls up, he tells Rose to stay in the car, and she talks to Christian, who's stowed away in the back. Rose decides to go against his orders, and she gets out. Lissa tries to escape through the grounds, but there are Psi-hounds that surround her and corral her to a helicopter that just landed. Suddenly, Rose shows up and takes out the guards, but Christian gets shot in the process. While Dimitri arrests Victor, Lissa feeds off of Rose to power up so she can save Christian. When they get back to the academy, Kurova debriefs Rose over the happenings of Victor, and Rose talks to Dimitri about the interesting incident that almost occurred the night before. I love how Rose tries to explain that she only said sweet, sassy Molassy because she was under the influence of the love charm. Just then, Kurova tells Rose that Victor wants to talk to her about her gift, and she heads down there immediately. Once there, Victor tells Rose that Lissa's power is what it is because Rose almost died in the car accident. This is where the bond came from. Just then, Natalie shows up, and we see that she's turned herself into Strigoi to aid her father, Victor. With a little help from Dimitri, who shows up at the perfect time, they're able to kill Natalie and recapture Victor. The next day, Rose catches up with Lissa, and they all head to a conference with Queen Tatiana. Once there, Lissa takes over the stage, and she addresses all of the school in a manner that she wished she would have in the first conference. With this speech, Lissa proves that she is royalty, and she's working towards leading the vampires. I'd imagine that would be a feat to accomplish. I can't imagine that vampires are an easy bunch to wrangle in a political state. Oh, and here we go again with Rose trying to get Dimitri to admit his undying love for her. This is just a forbidden love that shouldn't even happen. What about Mason? Press F in the comments to pay respect to Mason. It turns out that Rose used this whole speech as a way to take Dimitri by surprise from a training standpoint. But on her way back to the academy, she runs into the crow that Lissa healed. After saying her goodbyes to it, we get a good look at a Strigoi threat that Ms. Karp is leading, and it's terrifying. Then the credits roll. Honestly, it's a teenage vampire love story without a good love story. The combat isn't bad when it's there, and Zoe Duchess' personality is always entertaining to watch. But that's about it. Give it a shot if that tickles your fancy. Sweet sassy Molassy. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.